My daughter stood in my living room, her manicured finger pointing at my mother's jewelry box, and said with a sneer, "You're going to die soon anyway. Give it to me now." I looked her in the eyes, those eyes I once kissed goodnight, and replied calmly, "All right, Natasha, take it." What she didn't know was that I had spent 3 months preparing for this moment, and when she opened that box, what she found inside would destroy everything she thought she knew about our family. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has reached. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was watering the roses in my front yard, the same roses my late husband William planted 40 years ago when we first bought this house. The sun was warm on my face, and for a moment, I felt peace. That peace shattered when a sleek black Mercedes pulled into my driveway with a screech. Natasha stepped out, wearing a crimson Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Behind her came Vanessa, my 23-year-old granddaughter, tapping on her phone with rhinestone-encrusted nails, not even bothering to look up. They didn't hug me. They didn't ask how I was. Natasha just marched straight past me into the house, her heels clicking like a countdown to disaster. "Mother, we need to talk," she announced, already standing in front of my china cabinet, eyeing the silver tea set with the cold calculation of an appraiser. I followed them inside, my heart already sinking. In the past year, Natasha had visited exactly 4 times. Each time, something from the house would mysteriously disappear afterward. First, it was grandmother's pearl-inlaid music box, then father's vintage pocket watch, then the antique porcelain vase from the hallway. I noticed. I said nothing. I was waiting to understand why. "Sit down, Mother," Natasha commanded, as if this were her house and not mine. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone, smirking. That's when I knew something bad was coming. "I'm going to be direct because I don't have time for your sentimentality," Natasha said, crossing her legs. "You're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in jewelry that you never wear. It's selfish and ridiculous. I'm your only daughter. That jewelry should be mine, and I want it now." The audacity of her words hit me like a slap. This was the daughter I raised alone after William died when she was only 8. The daughter I worked double shifts for at the hospital, coming home at midnight with aching feet, just to afford her piano lessons and summer camps. The daughter who used to curl up next to me on this very couch and say, "Mama, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." I looked at her now, a stranger in designer clothes, and asked quietly, "Why the rush, Natasha? Why now?" Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Because you're 68 years old, Mother. Let's be realistic. How much longer are you going to hoard things you don't even use?" What Natasha didn't know, what she had no idea about, was that 3 weeks earlier, my younger granddaughter Iris had come to visit me. Sweet 16-year-old Iris, the daughter Natasha barely acknowledged because she wasn't as pretty or popular as Vanessa. Iris was the one who still called me every Sunday, the one who remembered my birthday, the one who noticed things. She had knocked on my door at 9 in the evening, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. "Grandma Viv," she'd sobbed into my shoulder, "I need to tell you something about Mom. I'm so scared, but you need to know." That night, sitting at my kitchen table with hot cocoa between us, Iris had opened her laptop and shown me everything. Bank statements she'd found in her mother's office, screenshots of online gambling accounts with losses totaling over $200,000, pawn shop receipts for family heirlooms. text messages between Natasha and someone named Rex about needing one more big score to clear the debt. "She's been stealing from you, Grandma," Iris had whispered, her voice breaking. "All those things that disappeared from your house, she's been selling them. And now she's telling Dad she needs money for a business investment. But it's all lies. She has a gambling problem, and these people she owes money to. They've been calling the house, Grandma. I'm scared of what she'll do next." I had held Iris until her tears stopped, my heart splintering into pieces. My own daughter, a thief, a liar, an addict. But I didn't cry. Instead, I made a decision. I called Raymond. Raymond Mitchell had been my neighbor for 23 years. More importantly, he'd been a detective with the Chicago Police Department for 30 years before retiring. After William died, Ray had become my closest friend, helping with repairs, sharing dinners, listening when I needed to talk. He'd always said, "Vivian, if you ever need anything at all, I'm here." That night, I needed him. Ray came over within an hour. He listened to everything Iris showed us, his weathered face growing darker with each revelation. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair and said in his gravelly voice, "Viv, this is serious. Your daughter is in deep with some dangerous people. These gambling debts. She's borrowed from loan sharks, the kind that don't forgive. She's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." "What do I do, Ray?" I asked, feeling older than my 68 years. He looked at me with those sharp blue eyes that had solved hundreds of cases. "You document everything. You protect yourself and Iris, and you prepare for what's coming, because she's going to come for that jewelry. It's the only thing you have left that's worth enough to save her." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Ray had been helping me quietly. We'd installed a small camera in my living room. We'd photographed every piece of jewelry and had them appraised. We'd collected evidence. And I'd called Lucia Moreno, a lawyer who'd been my friend since nursing school and who now specialized in family law and estate planning. The trap was set. I just had to wait for Natasha to walk into it. Now, sitting in my living room with Natasha demanding my jewelry, I felt strangely calm. "Why do you need it right now?" I asked again. "That's none of your business," Natasha snapped. "It's mine by right. I'm your daughter. Or are you planning to leave everything to some charity like those crazy old people you read about?" Vanessa laughed, a cruel sound. "Grandma, just give it up. You're not going to wear it to bingo night or whatever old people do." I looked at Vanessa, and for the first time, I spoke with ice in my voice. "Your mother has taught you well, hasn't she? Greed, disrespect, the belief that you're entitled to things you haven't earned." Vanessa's smile vanished. Natasha stood up, her face flushing red. "How dare you, after everything I've done for you, visiting you, checking on you?" "4 times in 12 months, I interrupted quietly. "You've visited 4 times, Natasha. And each time, something disappeared from this house afterward. Do you think I didn't notice?" The room went silent. Natasha's eyes widened for just a second, a flash of panic, before she recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused. Maybe your memory is going, Mother. Maybe we should talk about assisted living." "My memory is perfect," I said, standing up slowly. My knees ached, but I straightened my spine. "I remember every single item. Grandmother Josephine's music box, worth $8,000. Your grandfather's 1952 Patek Philippe watch, worth $12,000. The Ming Dynasty vase, worth $15,000. Should I continue?" Natasha's face had gone pale. Those were gifts. You gave them to me." Gifts that you sold within days of taking them. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. I have the pawn shop receipts, Natasha. All of them. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa had stopped looking at her phone. Natasha's hands were trembling, and she'd sat back down, all her bravado crumbling. How did you... she started. It doesn't matter how I know, I said, my voice steady, despite my breaking heart. What matters is why. Why would my daughter, who married a successful investment banker, who lives in a mansion in Lake Forest, who drives a Mercedes and wears Chanel, why would she need to steal from her elderly mother? Natasha's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and fear. You don't understand, she hissed. You've never understood. You lived your whole life in this tiny house, working as a nurse, perfectly content with mediocrity. I wanted more. I deserved more. And yes, I've made some mistakes. But that jewelry can fix everything. Mistakes, I repeated, my voice rising. You've gambled away over $200,000, Natasha. You've borrowed money from criminals. You've lied to your husband, stolen from your mother. And worst of all, my voice cracked. You've neglected your younger daughter while showering attention on the one who fits your image of success. Vanessa stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, I commanded, with a force that surprised even me. Both of you, because we're going to have a conversation that's 20 years overdue. I walked to the mantel and picked up an old photograph. It showed a young woman in nurse's scrubs, exhausted circles under her eyes, holding a sleeping 8-year-old girl. Do you know when this was taken, Natasha? She glanced at it, uncomfortable. No. This was 3 days after your father's funeral. I had just finished a 16-hour shift at the hospital because we needed the overtime pay. You'd fallen asleep waiting for me, and I carried you to bed. Look at my face in this photo. Do you see it? Natasha looked away, but I continued. I was 34 years old, newly widowed, with a daughter to raise and a mortgage to pay. William's life insurance barely covered the funeral costs because he'd been sick for so long we'd depleted our savings on medical bills. I had nothing, Natasha. Nothing except this house, my job, and you. I set the photo down and picked up another one. This is from your high school graduation. See that necklace I'm wearing? The simple gold chain? I touched my neck, where the same chain still rested 40 years later. That's the only jewelry I've worn in decades, because everything else, every piece in that jewelry box you want so badly, I've been saving. For you, for your future, for the day you might truly need it. Tears were running down my face now, but I didn't stop. I worked night shifts so I could attend your school plays. I skipped meals so you could have new clothes. I drove a car held together with duct tape and prayers so you could go to college debt-free. And I never complained, never asked for gratitude, because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice everything for our children, hoping they'll grow into good people. I looked directly at Natasha, and my voice dropped to a whisper. When did you become someone I don't recognize? When did my kind, sweet daughter turn into this? Natasha was crying now too, but her tears were angry. You don't understand the pressure, Mother. Sterling's business partners, they all have wives who look perfect, who throw perfect parties, who wear the right clothes. I have to keep up. And yes, I started playing poker at the club. And yes, I lost more than I should have. But I can win it back. I just need... No, I interrupted firmly. You need help, Natasha. Professional help. What you're describing is addiction, and it's destroying you and your family. She stood up, her face twisted with fury. I'm not an addict. I just had a string of bad luck. The jewelry will fix everything. Just give it to me, Mother. If you ever loved me, if you ever cared about my happiness, you'll give me the jewelry right now. This was the moment, the point of no return. I took a deep breath and said the words I'd been practicing for 3 weeks. All right. Natasha, I'll give you the jewelry. Her expression changed instantly, from rage to shock to triumphant relief. You will? Yes, I said calmly. I'll give it to you right now, all of it. Vanessa squealed with excitement. Natasha wiped her tears, her hands already reaching out. Thank you, Mother. Thank you. You won't regret this. I promise I'll... The box is in my bedroom, I continued, walking toward the hallway. Come with me. As we walked to my bedroom, my heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. This was it. Everything Ray, Lucia, and I had planned came down to this moment. My bedroom was simple. The same furniture William and I had bought 45 years ago. On my dresser sat the ornate mahogany jewelry box, 12 inches tall, with intricate rose carvings on the lid. It had been my mother's, and her mother's before that, passed down through 4 generations of women in my family. Natasha's eyes locked onto it like a predator spotting prey. Her hands were already reaching out. Before I give this to you, I said, placing my hand on top of the box, I want you to know something. This box has been in our family for over 100 years. Your great-great-grandmother carried it with her when she immigrated from Ireland, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the jewelry she'd sewn into the lining of her coat. These pieces represent survival, sacrifice, and love passed down through generations of strong women. Mother, please, Natasha said impatiently. I know the history, just... And now, I continued, lifting the box and placing it in her hands. It's yours. Open it. The weight of the box surprised her. She looked at me, confused by something in my expression, but greed won over caution. She set it on the bed, her fingers trembling as she unlatched the small brass lock. Vanessa crowded next to her, both of them holding their breath as Natasha lifted the lid. The look on their faces, I will remember it for the rest of my life. Inside the box, carefully arranged, was not jewelry. Instead, there were documents, photographs, evidence, a letter with Natasha's name on it in my handwriting. What is this? Natasha whispered, her voice hollow. That, I said quietly, is the truth. Her hands shook as she pulled out the first document. It was a complete record of every item she'd stolen from my house over the past year, with dates, descriptions, and the prices she'd sold them for at various pawn shops around Chicago. Ray had been thorough. Underneath that were bank statements showing her gambling losses, every online poker game, every trip to the casino in Indiana, every loan from Sterling's business account that she'd claimed was for charity events or shopping. Then came the photographs. Pictures of Natasha entering a dingy building on the south side, a known gambling den that Ray's old contacts had identified. Time-stamped. Dated. Undeniable. No, Natasha breathed, shuffling through the papers frantically. No. How did you? Keep going, I said, my voice breaking despite my attempt to stay strong. There's more. She pulled out a legal document. Her eyes scanned it, growing wider with each line. This is a trust agreement. You've put everything, the house, your savings, everything, into a trust for Iris. That's right, I confirmed. As of 2 weeks ago, I no longer own this house or any of my assets. They're held in trust for your younger daughter, the one you ignore, The one you forgot to pick up from school 3 times last month because you were too busy at the casino." Vanessa gasped. "You're giving everything to Iris? That little—" "Careful," I warned, my eyes flashing. "That little girl is your sister, and she's worth 10 of you." Natasha had gone pale as a ghost. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped several papers. But then she saw the envelope at the bottom of the box, thick, cream-coloured paper with her name written in my careful script. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Read it," I said, out loud. "Vanessa should hear this too." Natasha's fingers fumbled with the envelope. She pulled out several pages of my handwriting and began to read, her voice cracking. "My dearest Natasha, if you're reading this, then you've demanded the jewelry, and I've given you this box instead. I want you to understand that this decision didn't come from anger, though I am angry. It didn't come from revenge, though you've hurt me deeply. It came from love, a mother's love that refuses to enable her daughter's self-destruction. But before I explain my actions, there's something you need to know. Something I've kept from you for 42 years, believing I was protecting you. I was wrong. The truth has a way of surfacing, and you deserve to hear it from me. Natasha, you are not my biological daughter." The letter fell from her hands. The room spun. Natasha looked at me with eyes so wide, so full of shock and betrayal, that I almost couldn't continue, but I had to. "Keep reading," I said gently. She picked up the letter with trembling hands. "When your father and I had been married for 5 years, we learned I couldn't have children. The endometriosis that caused me so much pain had done irreversible damage. We were devastated. William wanted to be a father more than anything, and I wanted to give him that gift. We decided to adopt. It took 2 years of paperwork, home visits, and waiting, but then we got the call. A young woman, only 17, had given birth to a baby girl and was placing her for adoption. She was scared, alone, but she wanted her daughter to have a good life. That baby was you, Natasha. The moment they placed you in my arms, you became mine. Not because of blood, but because of an instant, overwhelming love that took my breath away. William felt it too. You were ours, completely and perfectly ours. Your biological mother asked only one thing, that we keep a letter she'd written to you, to be given when you were old enough to understand. I've kept that letter safe for 42 years. It's in this box, underneath this one you're reading now. I never told you, because I was afraid. Afraid you'd feel I wasn't your real mother. Afraid you'd go looking for her and I'd lose you. Afraid that the truth would somehow diminish the life we'd built together. But secrets have a cost, my darling girl, and I've paid it in watching you spiral into a life I don't recognize. Natasha collapsed onto my bed. The letter clutched to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Vanessa stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, looking between her mother and me with an expression of absolute shock. "You're not. She's not." Vanessa couldn't even form the words. I sat down next to Natasha and placed my hand on her shaking shoulder. "You are my daughter," I said firmly. "Biology doesn't determine that. Love does. The thousands of nights I held you when you were sick, the school plays and soccer games I never missed, the way my heart swells with pride when I think of the woman you could be, that makes you my daughter." "Then why?" Natasha sobbed, lifting her tear-stained face. "Why tell me now? Why like this?" "Because you need to understand something crucial," I said, tears flowing freely down my own cheeks. "Your biological mother gave you up because she loved you enough to want better for you than she could provide at 17. I raised you, sacrificed for you, loved you with every fibre of my being. And now I'm doing the hardest thing a mother can do. I'm refusing to enable your destruction. I pulled out the second letter from the box, this one yellowed with age, sealed in plastic to preserve it. This is from her, from Elizabeth. She wrote it the day she gave you up for adoption. I've read it 1,000 times over the years, always wondering when and how to give it to you. Natasha took it with shaking hands but didn't open it. She just stared at it, tears dropping onto the plastic covering. There's one more thing in the box, I said quietly. Look underneath the letters. She reached in with trembling fingers and pulled out a small photo album. The pictures inside showed me at every stage of my life, but not the version of me Natasha knew. These photos showed someone different. Who is this? Natasha asked, looking at a photo of a young woman in nursing scrubs standing in what appeared to be a war zone, tending to wounded soldiers. That's me, I said softly. In Vietnam, 1968. Vanessa grabbed the album, flipping through pages with growing disbelief. Grandma, you were in the war. I was an army nurse, I explained. I volunteered when I was 22. I spent 3 years in field hospitals, treating soldiers who were barely older than boys. I saw things, experienced things that changed me forever. I pointed to another photo, me receiving a medal, my face young but already marked by what I'd witnessed. That's the Bronze Star. They gave it to me for saving 8 men during a rocket attack on our hospital. I pulled them from a burning building, one by one, while the ammunition depot next door was exploding. Natasha and Vanessa stared at me as if seeing a stranger. After the war, I came home with PTSD that went undiagnosed for years. I threw myself into work, into building a normal life, into trying to forget. That's when I met your father, Natasha. William was patient, kind, and he helped me heal. And when we couldn't have biological children, and they brought you to us, you became my reason to keep fighting. You were my second chance at life. I turned to another section of the album, photos of me working at the hospital in the 1980s and 90s. For 30 years, I was head nurse in the cardiac ICU at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I trained hundreds of nurses. I saved countless lives. I was respected, awarded, recognized in my field. I wasn't just a nurse, Natasha. I was excellent at what I did. Why didn't you ever tell me? Natasha whispered. Because I didn't need to prove anything, I said simply. I didn't need status symbols or recognition. I had work I loved, a daughter I adored, and a life of purpose. That was enough. I took her hand. But you, my darling girl, you've been chasing something your whole life, and I never understood what it was. Now I realize you've been trying to prove you're worthy, trying to fill some void inside you. And I wonder if it's because I never told you where you came from, never told you about the brave teenager who loved you enough to let you go, never told you about the life I lived before you came along. There was a long silence, broken only by Natasha's quiet sobbing. Then Vanessa, her voice small and uncertain, asked, "What happens now?" I stood up, composing myself. Now, we deal with the reality of the situation. Natasha, you owe dangerous people a lot of money. Your gambling addiction has put your entire family at risk. The jewelry, the real jewelry, is in a safety deposit box at the bank, and it will stay there. But I need it, Natasha cried desperately. Mother, please, you don't understand. These people, they've threatened me. They know where I live, where the girls go to school. If I don't pay them... You're going to tell Sterling the truth, I interrupted firmly. Tonight. All of it. And then you're going to check yourself into treatment for gambling addiction. I've already made arrangements with a facility in Wisconsin. They have space for you tomorrow." "I can't tell Sterling," Natasha said, panic rising in her voice. "He'll divorce me. He'll take the girls. I'll lose everything." "You'll lose everything if you don't tell him," I countered. "These loan sharks you're involved with, they don't make empty threats. Ray has connections. He knows who you've borrowed from, and he says you have maybe a week before they escalate." At that moment, as if on cue, there was a knock at my front door. Natasha's face went white. "No," she breathed. "They found me here." I shook my head. "That's not them. That's Ray and Lucia. I asked them to come over. We're going to figure this out together, as a family, but only if you're willing to face the truth and get help." I led them back to the living room, where Ray and Lucia were waiting. Ray stood near the window, his detective instincts making him check the street outside. Lucia sat on the couch with her briefcase, professional and compassionate in equal measure. "Natasha," Lucia said gently, "your mother has asked me to help mediate this situation. I need you to be completely honest with me. How much money do you currently owe? And to whom?" Natasha sat down heavily, her face in her hands. For a long moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a broken whisper, she said, $247,000 to 3 different loan sharks. They want it by next Friday, or they've said they'll... She couldn't finish. Vanessa had gone pale. "Mum," she whispered. "How could you?" Ray spoke up, his voice gravelly but not unkind. "Natasha, I need you to give me names. I still have contacts on the force. We can arrange protection, but I need to know exactly who we're dealing with." Natasha looked up at him, fear and shame warring in her expression. Slowly, she gave him 3 names. I watched Ray's jaw tighten with each one. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and stepped into the kitchen to make calls. Lucia opened her briefcase. "Your mother and I have been working on a plan. It's not perfect, but it might save your family. Sterling doesn't know about any of this yet, correct?" Natasha shook her head miserably. "Here's what's going to happen," Lucia continued. "You're going to go home tonight and tell your husband everything. I'll be there with you if you want, to help facilitate the conversation. Sterling will be angry, hurt, and shocked, but based on what your mother has told me about him, I believe he'll stand by you if you agree to get treatment." "He'll hate me," Natasha whispered. "Maybe," Lucia said honestly. "But the alternative is worse. The alternative is that these loan sharks escalate, possibly putting your daughters in danger. The alternative is that you continue gambling and the debt grows. The alternative is that you lose your family anyway, but under much worse circumstances." I sat down next to my daughter and took her hand. "Sterling loves you, Natasha. And if he truly loves you, he'll help you through this. But you have to be brave enough to tell him the truth." Natasha looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "What about the jewelry? You said it's in a safety deposit box. We could sell it, pay off the debts." "No," I said firmly. "That jewelry is the last financial safety net this family has. It stays locked away until there's a true emergency, or until I die, whichever comes first. The trust I've set up ensures that when I'm gone, Iris will have resources to build her life. And there's a provision that if you complete treatment and maintain sobriety for 5 years, you'll receive a portion as well." 5 years? Natasha's voice rose. "Mother, I need help now." "You need consequences now," I corrected gently but firmly. "Sterling will have to deal with the debt, or you'll have to declare bankruptcy, or some combination of both. But I'm not bailing you out with the jewelry. If I do that, You'll never truly face what you've done. You'll never have a reason to change. Tears streamed down Natasha's face. I can't lose my family. I can't lose Sterling and the girls. Then fight for them, I said, squeezing her hand. Check into treatment. Do the work. Face your addiction. Show Sterling and your daughters that you're willing to change. That's how you keep your family. Ray returned from the kitchen, his expression grim. I've talked to some people. The guys you owe money to. They're serious players, Natasha. But I've put out some feelers. Let it be known that you're under police protection. That'll buy us some time. But your husband needs to know tonight. He needs to move money around, possibly hire private security for a while. Natasha looked around the room at all of us. Her mother, who'd raised her, the neighbor who was trying to protect her, the lawyer who was helping navigate this disaster, and her own daughter, who was seeing her completely vulnerable for the first time. Okay, she finally whispered. Okay, I'll tell him. I'll go to treatment. I'll do whatever it takes. Lucia made a phone call, and 20 minutes later, Sterling Pierce's BMW pulled up outside. I watched through the window as he got out. Confusion and worry evident on his handsome face. Natasha had texted him to come to my house immediately, that it was an emergency. When Sterling entered, he looked around at all of us with growing alarm. What's going on? Nat, are you okay? Is it your mother? Sterling, Lucia said professionally, standing to shake his hand. I'm Lucia Moreno, family attorney and a friend of Vivienne's. Please sit down. Your wife has something she needs to tell you, and we're all here to help facilitate a difficult conversation. Sterling sat, his eyes never leaving Natasha's face. Honey, you're scaring me. What is this? What followed was one of the most painful hours of my life. Natasha, with Lucia's help and occasional prompting, told her husband everything, every lie, every loss, every borrowed dollar, every stolen heirloom from my house, every threat from the loan sharks. I watched Sterling's face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger, betrayal, fear, and finally, a kind of exhausted devastation. At one point, he stood up and paced to the window, his hands clenched into fists. At another point, he sat with his head in his hands, silent. When Natasha finished, the silence was deafening. Finally, Sterling spoke, his voice hoarse. $247,000? You gambled away $250,000 and lied to me about it. For how long? 3 years, Natasha whispered. It started small, just fun with the ladies at the club. Then I started winning big sometimes, and it felt so good, so exciting. But then I'd lose, and I'd chase the losses, and it spiraled. I'm so sorry, Sterling. I'm so sorry. Sterling looked at me, his eyes full of pain. Did you know, Vivienne? Not until 3 weeks ago, I said honestly. Iris told me because she was worried. That's when I started gathering evidence and making plans. I'm sorry you're learning about it this way, but Natasha came here today demanding jewelry to pay these debts, and I couldn't enable her anymore. He nodded slowly, processing. Then he looked at Vanessa, who'd been silent throughout the whole conversation. Did you know? Vanessa shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Daddy. I swear I didn't know. Sterling stood and walked to Natasha. For a moment, I thought he might walk past her and leave. Instead, he knelt in front of her chair and took her face in his hands. Look at me, he said, his voice breaking. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel betrayed in ways I can't even articulate right now. But you're my wife. You're the mother of my children, and if you're willing to get help, real help, then we're going to get through this." Natasha broke down completely, sobbing into his shoulder as he held her. "I'm so sorry," she kept repeating. "I'm so sorry." "The debt," Sterling said, looking at Ray over Natasha's head. "You said these are dangerous people. What's the timeline?" Ray laid out the situation honestly. The threats, the potential for violence, the need for immediate action. Sterling listened, his jaw tight, and then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling our bank," he said. "I'm calling our accountant. I'm calling a security company. And I'm calling my lawyer to explore our options. But Nat," he pulled back to look at his wife, "you're going to treatment tomorrow. And when you get out, we're going into marriage counseling. And you're going to rebuild trust with our daughters, especially Iris. Do you understand?" Natasha nodded frantically. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Sterling. Thank you for not giving up on me." He stood, his face hardening slightly. "I'm not giving up on you. But I'm also not pretending this didn't happen. You've hurt a lot of people, including your mother, who never did anything but love and support you. And that's going to have to be addressed too." Sterling looked at me, and I saw respect in his eyes mixed with the pain. "Vivian, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Thank you for protecting Iris. Thank you for having the courage to stop enabling Natasha when it would have been easier to just give her what she wanted." At that moment, there was another knock at the door. I opened it to find Iris standing there, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her young face anxious. "Grandma?" she said, glancing past me to see the crowd in my living room. "You texted me to come over after school. Is everything okay?" I pulled her into a hug. This sweet girl who'd had the courage to tell me the truth. "Come in, honey. Your family's here." Iris entered hesitantly, her eyes widening when she saw her mother's tear-stained face, her father's grim expression, and her sister's shocked demeanor. "What's going on?" Natasha stood up, walked to her younger daughter, and for the first time in what looked like years, really looked at her. "Iris," she said, her voice cracking. "I owe you an apology. I owe you so many apologies I don't even know where to start." Iris stood frozen, unused to her mother's attention. "I've been a terrible mother to you," Natasha continued, tears streaming down her face. "I ignored you. I favored your sister. I missed your school events and forgot to pick you up and made you feel invisible. And the worst part is, you're the one who tried to save me. You're the one who told Grandma the truth because you were worried about our family. You're 16 years old, and you're braver than I've ever been." Iris's own tears started falling. "Mum, I just wanted you to be okay. I was so scared." Natasha pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "I'm going to get help, baby. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the mother you deserve. I promise." I watched this moment, my heart both breaking and healing at the same time. This was what I'd hoped for when I'd set this entire plan in motion. Not to punish Natasha, but to break through the walls of denial and force her to face reality before it destroyed her completely. Lucia cleared her throat gently. "I hate to interrupt, but we have logistics to handle. Sterling, I'll send you the information for the treatment facility. Natasha, you'll need to pack tonight. Ray, can you coordinate with Sterling on the security situation?" Everyone nodded, moving into action mode. As they began making plans and phone calls, I slipped out to the back porch, needing a moment alone. I was standing by William's rose bushes when Natasha found me. She stood beside me silently for a moment, both of us looking at the flowers. I used to help Daddy plant these, she said softly. Every spring. I'd forgotten that until just now. You were his pride and joy, I said quietly. He used to call you his little rose, beautiful, but with thorns to protect yourself. He'd be heartbroken to see what you've been going through. I'm sorry, Mom. Her voice broke on the word, Mom. I'm sorry for stealing from you, for disrespecting you, for demanding the jewelry. I'm sorry for becoming someone neither you nor Daddy would recognize. And I'm sorry that you had to be the one to stop me, because I couldn't stop myself. I turned to her, this woman who was my daughter in every way that mattered, and I cupped her face in my hands the way I used to when she was small. I love you, Natasha. I have loved you from the moment they placed you in my arms 42 years ago, and I will love you until my last breath. But love doesn't mean enabling. Love means standing firm when someone you care about is destroying themselves. The letter, she said, from my birth mother. I haven't opened it yet, I'm afraid. Elizabeth loved you too, I said gently, in her own way. Read it when you're ready. And remember that you have two mothers who love you, one who gave you life, and one who gave you everything else. We stood there as the sun began to set, mother and daughter, surrounded by roses and the weight of hard truths. Finally, Natasha said, Did you ever doubt that I was really yours? Because I wasn't from your body? Never, I said firmly. Not once. You were mine the moment I held you. Biology is just one way to make a family, sweetheart. Love is the way that matters. 6 months later, I received a letter from Natasha. She was still in treatment, extended from the original 30 days to a full 6-month program because she'd needed it. The letter was different from any communication I'd received from her in years. Honest, vulnerable, and full of real growth. She wrote about the work she was doing in therapy, understanding the roots of her addiction, the emptiness she'd been trying to fill with gambling and material things. She wrote about the other women in treatment with her, women from all walks of life, and how she'd learned that addiction doesn't discriminate. She wrote about reading Elizabeth's letter, finally, and learning that her birth mother had been a junior in high school, pressured by her family to give up her baby, but who had loved her and thought about her every day. Elizabeth had included her contact information in case Natasha ever wanted to meet. Natasha was thinking about it. Most importantly, she wrote about her daughters. Sterling had been bringing Iris and Vanessa to family therapy sessions twice a week. Vanessa had struggled with the revelations about her mother, but was slowly accepting reality. Iris, sweet Iris, had blossomed with the attention and validation she was finally receiving. As I sat on my porch reading this letter, Ray came over with 2 cups of coffee. Good news? He asked, settling into the chair beside me. Progress, I said, smiling through tears. Slow, but real. You did the right thing, Viv, Ray said, patting my hand. It took guts to stand up to your own daughter like that. A lesser person would have just handed over the jewelry to keep the peace. Peace built on lies and enabling isn't real peace, I said. I learned that in the war. Sometimes you have to go through fire to get to the other side. The jewelry was still in the safety deposit box, where it would stay. The house was still in trust for Iris, ensuring her future was secure. And I was still here, in the home William and I built, surrounded by his roses and memories of a life well lived. A few weeks later, Natasha came home from treatment. There was a small gathering at Sterling and Natasha's house. Just family. I watched as Natasha, sober and clear-eyed in a way I hadn't seen in years, played a board game with Iris and Vanessa, laughing at something Iris said. Sterling caught my eye across the room and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded. This was far from over. Recovery would be a lifetime journey for Natasha. There would be setbacks and struggles ahead. But for the first time in years, there was hope. As I drove home that evening, the sun setting over Chicago, I thought about the jewelry box, the truths it had revealed, and the family it had saved. I thought about the scared 17-year-old girl who'd given up her baby out of love, and the young nurse who'd taken that baby and raised her with everything she had. I thought about the journey from Vietnam to nursing school, to motherhood, to this moment. A lifetime of learning that love isn't always soft. Sometimes love is firm, sometimes it says no. Sometimes it forces confrontation, because the alternative is watching someone you love destroy themselves. The story you've just heard is based on real events, though names and places have been changed to protect those involved. We don't share it to judge, but in the hope that someone listening might recognize themselves or someone they love, and find the courage to act before it's too late. I want to ask you something. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have given your daughter the jewelry to keep peace? Would you have enabled her addiction? Or would you have had the strength to say no, knowing it might cost you your relationship? Tell me in the comments what you think, because every story we share can light the way for someone else who's struggling in the darkness. God bless you all. And remember, true love sometimes means being brave enough to let someone hit bottom so they can finally climb back up. Right now on the end screen, I'm leaving you with 2 more stories from this channel that I know will touch your heart. Thank you for staying with me until the very end.